Former Miami Hurricane Malik Bryant is the latest official addition to the Missouri roster. Plus, I want to update you on Cayden Lee as well. This and basketball and more on Locked On Mizzou.
You are Locked On Mizzou, your daily podcast on the Missouri Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, all you true sons and daughters, I'm John Miller, your Mizzou mafioso, and the central scrutinizer of Missouri Tigers football and basketball. And on today's program, we got a snow day coming. It looks like tomorrow in Columbia here as I speak now on Friday afternoon. Looks like snow is going to start falling pretty hard a couple hours before tip-off for the Missouri-Oklahoma basketball game. So you know what? I want to get into that basketball game for all you sickos who are going to be joining me at Mizzou Arena tomorrow. Plus, former Tiger Damon Wilson, now officially a former Tiger. And I do want to update you on Cayden Lee a little bit as well. But let's talk about somebody who is officially on board with Missouri now, Malik Bryant. This according to Matt Zenitz and Chris Hummer of CBS Sports. Malik Bryant was just, playing in the national championship game, or at least on the sidelines, because quite honestly, Malik Bryant was not the most active player in 2025, registering just 2 tackles for the Hurricanes. However, the previous year as a redshirt freshman, he did have 17 tackles, including 1.5 sacks. This is definitely one of those players who is leaning more toward the potential side at this point than production. That's been a bit of a debate among Missouri fans since Eli Drinkwitz made that famous line. But you know what? He was a former 4-star edge slash linebacker, I suppose, out of high school, but definitely going to be an edge rusher for Missouri. And it's 4-2-5 base scheme. It's 4-down lineman scheme. And Bryant, a guy with plenty of ability and another high upside guy that Missouri's adding to the edge room, along with, several other players, including many out of the state of Florida, including Jaden Jones from Florida State, for example, and players like already on the roster like Darius Smith, Dayton Hopkins, Langdon Kitchen, among others. But what I like about this is, again, just that Missouri adding depth to another important position and adding pieces here at the end of the process that could really be big-time additions for 2026. If Missouri has been patient, I think they've done a really good job of being patient. And in fact, if you want to revisit something that I said right before the portal, I was talking about how I wanted Missouri to play the portal. I actually had 3 goals for Missouri, and you know what? I think they've accomplished all 3 of them. I said, first of all, I was saying, hey, how will Missouri spend its money? But I don't know, but here's what I would do. Number 1, be flexible. And I think Missouri, with its flurry of additions here from big-time schools at the end of this process, showed that it was flexible. And it showed that I think its strategy, for the most part, has worked out. Number 2, I said Missouri needs to figure out the quarterback position early. You're either going to go big on a guy that you really, really like, or maybe if those guys were too expensive, this is what I was saying at the time, hey, you're going to find out early, then you can find out that you can wait on a depth piece to go with Matt Zollers. Well, obviously they figured out Austin Simmons was their guy early in the process. And finally, I said, where can Missouri focus on developing guys already on the roster? And I think defensive tackle was pretty clearly one of those places, and maybe offensive line to a slightly lesser extent as well, where Missouri feels like at least it has enough options, in my opinion. There's a guy like Dayton Hopkins who Missouri and Eli Drinkwitz in particular, I know, was high on this past offseason, this past training camp. In fact, during August, Drinkwitz himself really went out of his way to say that, hey, Dayton Hopkins is going to be a player in the SEC one day. Well, let's see if he's right. Let's see if maybe he's as right as soon as 2026. And by the way, some semi-breaking news here. It's 12:49 p.m. on Friday as I record here. Missouri did just announce that all sporting events as of now are a go. So they'll let us know if anything ends up being canceled. But as of now, all Missouri sporting events, including, at least from my perspective, importantly, the 1 p.m. tip-off against the Oklahoma Sooners, that game is still on as of now. And by the way, back to the transfer portal. Well, obviously I at least attempted to break a little bit of news yesterday about Cayden Lee. According to my source close to the Missouri program, well, he was on his way to Columbia. So he is going to be a Missouri Tiger. That's what I was reporting yesterday. And by God, that's what I'm still reporting as of today. And quite honestly, the longer it goes on before being official, I get a tiny bit nervous, of course. But you know what? All the reporting I've seen so far has been on my side on this thing. So I'm expecting official word on Cayden Lee, by the way, the former Ole Miss wide receiver being announced as part of Missouri's roster for 2026. I'd expect official word to break on that here in the next couple days, unless for whatever reason the bad weather here in the Midwest affects that for whatever reason. And again, I think just a lot of potential overproduction up front for the Tigers. I think in the transfer portal, at least, I think Missouri has a pretty good idea of what it's getting in Darius Smith and Langdon Kitchen. But when it comes to all of those guys, including Malik, Bryant, including C.J. May from Louisville, including the aforementioned Jaden Jones, well, it is a lot more. Those guys are a lot more about potential than production, than actual proven SEC level type of production at this point. The question is, will that pay off? And once again, that comment from Eli Drinkwitz, when put into context, was much more about using resources on high school players versus players in the transfer portal. I'll just say this, Missouri has had several players, including Zion Young, I would say, along the defensive edge. He thought, yeah, he was a solid player at Michigan State and a player who got even better at Missouri. I think Missouri has done a good job of, once again, identifying defensive ends in particular and interior guys as well who fit what they want to do, what the Tigers want to do. So I've got a pretty good amount of confidence in them. Again, this whole potential versus production thing, I think some fans who tend toward the negative side are trying to catch Eli Drinkwitz in being a hypocrite or something like that. Again, I think this was more about, hey, we're not going to be spending, premium dollars on high school players anymore. The days of that are probably finished. At least that's what I took from Eli Drinkwitz and his words. And you know what? Speaking of premium dollars and premium production, well, Damon Wilson certainly qualifies on both ends. And you know what? He is one guy we got to talk about. We need to talk about where he ended up. And also, you know what? From my Austin Simmons interview, my exclusive with the new Missouri quarterback from this past Monday, check that out on Spotify and YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts if you haven't listened to that yet. But Austin's answer about why he came to Missouri was particularly revealing to me. So you know what? I want to talk about that here in just a little bit, and also that Missouri basketball game and why I like the Tigers against the Sooners tomorrow. But you know what? First, let's talk about FanDuel, because it is officially playoff mode, folks. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action. Right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside of the app. Each game day, you'll see a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts you can apply to the bets you like most. And it's kind of fun to have a single bet boost that they give you and, just have maybe a 3-game or a 3-leg type of parlay as well. Let's go as small as possible, though, on the 3 legs and a little bit bigger on the sides that we like. Especially the bigger those profit boosts get, I'll tell you, if they're going to max it out at $20, go ahead and up it to $20. I don't want anybody to get in trouble here, but if they're going to give you a 50%, occasional 100% profit boost, you probably got to take it, folks. That's how I look at it anyway, because they're not going to give them to you forever. So visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. And it seemed like there was an outside chance that Damon Wilson might have returned to Missouri despite entering his name into the portal. But I never really thought there was much of a chance of that. And indeed, Wilson ends up with the Miami Hurricanes, the national runner-ups in the college football playoff. And of course, Wilson, I was talking about potential versus production. Well, clearly Wilson is proven production, and no doubt Miami is paying for it. And obviously, you win some, you lose some. You lose Damon Wilson to Miami specifically. That probably helped open the door for Malik Bryant, who then entered the transfer portal with a do not contact tag, meaning he pretty much knew immediately he was going to Missouri, or so it would seem. By the way, I will point something out. I should correct something. Power Mizzou is saying that Elijah Dotson, the transfer from Michigan, who was a safety and I believe a corner at Michigan, it sounds like he's expected to start out as a safety at Missouri and not a cornerback as I had originally assumed. So I think, it still remains to be seen exactly where he's going to end up. But obviously, I would put the smart money seems to be on him being a safety if that's where he's going to start out. So I did want to correct something there. And by the way, on the transfer portal, once again, when you just look at, obviously there's still some more moves to be made here, and obviously the Cayden Lee move, which most of us expect to happen at this point, including myself, of course. Even though that's not official yet, if we assume he comes, well, what type of strengths and weaknesses do we think this Missouri team has for 2026? Or more accurately, what do I think they have? Well, obviously with Ahmad Hardy and Jamal Roberts and the usual run scheme that Eli Drinkwitz, Curtis Looper, and the whole staff like to implement, I think Missouri is going to be an excellent running team once again. I don't think that's a real strong take whatsoever. I also think, obviously, Missouri has a strong-armed quarterback, which is something that it has not had. Well, I don't think they've had a quarterback with an arm like this since Drew Lock. Let's put it that way. Maybe Matt Zollers has the pure arm talent, but obviously just the lack of experience there. Hard to compare really anybody in the last few years to the upside of Austin Simmons. I think a guy who not only is a strong-armed quarterback, but a guy with true one-of-one. In other words, first-round type talent in the NFL draft. He could be the first quarterback in the NFL taken someday if he hits his absolute tippy-top upside. So that does open up the playbook and the passing game for Eli Drinkwitz and his new offensive coordinator, Chip Lindsey, in a way that it never, frankly, has been able to during his entire tenure here at Missouri. I also think with Cayden Lee, by the way, you've got a proven slot receiver, which is incredibly important in this day and age. You got a proven slot at the SEC level, replacing pretty well Damon Wilson, I would say. And with Donovan Olubade and the various additions at receiver, including Horatio Fields, I think you've got guys who can high point the football on the outside, and you've got a speed guy in Caleb Goody who can potentially take advantage of that strong arm in Austin Simmons. I think Missouri has gotten bigger at wide receiver in this cycle. Now, defensively, there are more question marks. When it comes to the linebackers, I think they should be good to great with Nick Rodriguez returning. Nicholas, I think it's Nicholas, I don't know, whatever. Whichever one he prefers is the one I will certainly go with. But Robert Woodyard Jr., I don't think I'll call him Bobby just yet, but Robert Woodyard Jr. along with Nicholas Rodriguez, that's quite a tag team at linebacker in Missouri's 4-2-5 base defense. But with so many new faces up front and on the back end of Missouri's secondary, I hesitate to make any real strong opinions one way or the other. I like that Missouri has a bunch of options. How that's all going to shake out is really anybody's guess at this point. And I will say Santana Banner, while Missouri's regular starters all departed this offseason from the defense, Santana Banner, he was basically a starter essentially for the last few weeks of the season. I thought he really turned into a difference-making type of player for Missouri the last few weeks of the season. That's not exactly a controversial opinion whatsoever. So that's where I think Missouri is defensively, with a lot of talent and a lot of questions, I think, at the very front and the back end of the defense right now. But that offense strikes me as one that's really, really high upside, because I think the Tigers once again are going to be able to run the football. Now with Austin Simmons in the fold, I think his talent alone allows you to open up the playbook in a way and throw different throws, run different routes than perhaps you've been able to during Eli Drinkwitz's time. And I just think the ceiling of this offense has gone up pretty immensely with Austin Simmons in the fold. And by the way, I did think it was really telling in my interview with Austin on Monday. I asked him, hey, why Missouri? Well, one of the first things that came out of his mouth was Chip Lindsey, the new Missouri offensive coordinator. And of course, the opinions are varying among Missouri fans on whether that was a good hire or not. Opinions varied on Michigan fans from his previous stop the previous year. But one thing there's no doubt about is that Chip Lindsey, when it comes to college football circles, whether it is the coaches or indeed quarterbacks themselves, whether it's Austin Simmons or it's somebody like Bryce Underwood or Drake May currently with the New England Patriots, he is really well thought of as an offensive mind, and specifically as a coach and a mentor of young quarterbacks. So for all of the focus on the X's and O's portion of it, and I understand why, I think the Lindsey hire was as much about mentoring Austin Simmons and Matt Zollers, for example, as it was about anything. And, Missouri basketball has had a bit of a rough stretch here lately. And I've been a bit of a vocal critic of Missouri basketball this season, or at least I haven't been high on this Missouri basketball team. But believe it or not, I like the Tigers against the Oklahoma Sooners tomorrow. So I want to explain exactly why coming up on the program. First, though, it is, of course, tax season, but that doesn't mean taxes have to take over your life. And this year, TurboTax is making it so much easier than ever to just hand your taxes over and move the heck on with your life and your day. And with TurboTax full service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or guesswork. And instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. And for a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150, all in if a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year. Just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today. By the way, a hot tip for all you gamblers out there. I was unaware of this, but I just learned it just now, apparently. Apparently, FanDuel releases its college basketball lines for individual games pretty much exactly 24 hours before tip-off because, well, it's 1:09, now 1:10 p.m. on a Friday as I record here. There was no Missouri-Oklahoma line, but Now there is. Hey, just a few minutes later. So, hey, that 24-hour rule, let's keep that in mind from now on as the degenerate gamblers that we are. But when it comes to Missouri and Oklahoma, the Tigers a 4.5-point favorite tomorrow. And you know what? I think that's a pretty fair line, but I do just like Missouri to win this basketball game tomorrow. Let's put it that way. Forget about the betting angle, because other than free throw shooting, I just on paper, I'm just not seeing a lot of obvious advantages for Oklahoma. And in particular, the Sooners have really had trouble scoring the basketball in conference play. Perhaps the Sooners are a good shot blocking team, and Missouri has had its shot blocked a decent amount this season, despite the fact the Tigers are a big team. So perhaps that'll stop Missouri and deter them in the paint a little bit. Again, the Sooners have been one of the best teams there. But again, other than that, it's just hard for me to see any real advantages that the Sooners have, or at least any obvious ones. This seems like a pretty good matchup for Missouri on paper, and it just seems like Missouri has a little bit more to play for than the Sooners at this point to me. By the way, Tom Hart, a play-by-play man on ESPN and the SEC network, also a Mizzou alum as well, he said this weekend there will be a weather mess for many, but there's something special about college basketball on snow days. The crowds are rowdier, and the fans that truly want to be there find their way to the arena. These games will be chaotic fun. And with that said, I definitely want to have some chaotic fun tomorrow afternoon. And I think that's advantage Missouri too. I really do. Beyond just, hey, this game on paper, I think the human nature side is going to be on to Missouri's advantage here as well. And I would say that regardless if it were the Tigers or anyone else, to me, this is about home versus away. I think in these snow type of games, I do think it's just, again, human nature being what it is, the rowdiness of those crowds. I think that is a real thing. There is sort of a different energy with those type of games, even if the stands are half full. Again, to Hart's point, by golly, the fans who are there really want to be there. And sometimes if you're the away team and you're Oklahoma and you've had to travel north up to Missouri where it's suddenly snowy as heck, and I understand they get snow in Oklahoma too. I understand we're not talking about the Miami Hurricanes here, but still I do think there is a slight psychological thing of having to travel north during the winter in the cold. I don't really want to go to Iowa right now either. No offense to the good people of the great state of Iowa, but I just think all of this plays to Missouri's advantage. And again, just the way this season has played out so far, I just think Missouri has a more realistic shot at playing for something the rest of the season. And to that point, I've mentioned FanDuel. I'll mention them once again. Over at FanDuel, the odds for Missouri to make the field of 68 right now. Yes is plus 190. So if you bet $100, you win 190. No, if you think Missouri's not going to make the field, it's minus 250. In other words, you'd have to bet $250 to win 100. That seems pretty fair to me. So the odds against Missouri making the field of 68, but certainly not impossible. I think Missouri's clearly on the outside looking in right now, but if it puts together a 3-4 game winning streak, especially if you don't include the Alabama game coming up, if Missouri can put together a win streak, certainly not out of the realm of possibility. And while I certainly have not been the most optimistic Missouri basketball fan in this particular season, at least, I can't write them off. That's for darn sure. And I do, at the very least, like Missouri to bounce back against the Sooners tomorrow at 1. So you know what? Hey, thanks for joining me here on today's podcast, by the way. And if you'd like to check out some ad-free versions of this show and you'd like Well, maybe to chop it up with me and my fellow Locked On hosts in a Discord server, we got to check out the Everydayer Club at lockedonpodcast.com/everydayer or click on the link in the description to today's program. So you know what? Since we're all going to be snowed in, how about a Saturday podcast for you post-game after the Oklahoma Sooners basketball game as well. So until then, I am John Miller, and thanks as always for listening to Locked On Mizzou.